Well, if last week was the Joe Andreessen game, this week might be the Frank Gore Jr. game. Excellent game for the rookie running back for the Buffalo Bills. Matt Bove with me, Sal Capaccio, here to talk about what happened in the preseason finale between the Bills and the Carolina Panthers. 31-26, Panthers win the game. Bills actually score some touchdowns, which is a good thing. But honestly, Matt, we're going to talk about the game. But really, what fans want to know about is who's making this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a weird game because nothing that happened in the final preseason game swayed my perception of who I thought would make it and who I didn't think was going to make it. I think sometimes if you have a good preseason finale, maybe that puts you onto a roster, or if you have a really bad game, maybe it bumps you off a roster. But I didn't really feel that way in this game against the Panthers. I thought that it was just kind of a lot of, okay, yeah, these are depth guys who probably aren't going to play for the Bills, and maybe it earns them a practice squad job or a chance with another team. But I didn't really think that there was anything that happened that made me change the 53-man roster that I had ready to go the second the game ended.
Okay, I'll say that's pretty similar for me. But there's a couple names I'm wondering a little bit more about, and I wonder if there's any sort of interesting surprises that could happen because of these names. So we'll get into all of that today and right here on the podcast. It's always Game Day in Buffalo. Thanks a lot. Audio, wherever you pod. Video, Sal Sports YouTube page. So check it out wherever you can catch us. This game, the Bills go into the game with no starters playing. Keon Coleman also among the players who didn't play. I mean, whether you want to consider him a starter or not, a rookie that didn't, go out there. There were several guys on the defensive side who are regular contributors, but not starters, who didn't play as well. The guys who did play, Ben DiNucci starts off. He throws the ball to early on. Who was catching all the passes early on? Tyrell Shavers had a couple.
Had a couple.
Yep,
KJ
right.
Hamler had a couple.
And then it was Deion Kane a little bit later in the game with Anthony Brown coming in the game.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of talk about the initial part of the game, the first part, because it was the starters for the Panthers against the Bills defense, Joe Andreessen playing there, and not non-Bills starters against the Carolina Panthers starting defense.
I mean, the Panthers did what they were supposed to do because they just kind of moved the ball at will down the field. It did require them going for it on 4th down, but their starters moved the ball down the field pretty easily. They scored a touchdown, looked like a miscommunication on a play. I don't know if Joe Andreessen was supposed to follow former Bill Jordan Matthews or if he thought somebody else had that assignment, and he looked like he was going out into the flat to cover the running back. So just miscommunication from a defensive standpoint. The Panthers go down the field with ease. After that, the Bills defense did a better job against the Panthers for a little bit of time, which is to be expected because then it was backups going against backups, not starters going against backups. I thought the Bills starters on offense that played did a fairly nice job against the Panthers. Now, because the Panthers defense, they started the game with some of their starters in the defensive line, and I believe a couple other starters mixed in. It was not their starting defense, but it was probably half of their starting defense. And I thought Ben DiNucci actually did a pretty good job moving the ball. I thought that they did some nice things. And not anything that I'm like, oh, wow, Ben DiNucci's going to make the team or anything like that. But it was practice squad probably, right?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I do think that we have to figure out what's going on with Mitch Trubisky here because they got to have a number 2. And if Mitch Trubisky isn't, if they find out over the next couple days that Mitch Trubisky isn't going to be available, is it clearly Ben DiNucci? Because I could make a case for Anthony Brown after what I saw today.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there. I totally get it because I thought that he was fine. But if it's Ben DiNucci, I would have a big problem with that. If it's Ben DiNucci as the backup quarterback on the 53-man roster, I think you need to do something to address the position. If it's Ben DiNucci as your practice squad quarterback, basically replacing Shane Buechele, and then he is your break glass in case of emergency, I think you can live with that. I think that if something happens to Josh Allen, you're kind of screwed anyway. But if I was Brandon Beane and the Mitch Trubisky injury was going to be something that lingered more than, let's say a month, I would be either on the phone with the Steelers trying to make a trade for Kyle Allen, or I would be going to another team that has a veteran backup who I think would be more, not necessarily just replacement level. I didn't see anything from either of the quarterbacks today that makes me think that they could do that in an actual regular season NFL game against starters.
I hear you. I think the trick, though, Matt, would be, and your Kyle Allen point is right, like somebody who knows the system a little bit, right? Case Keenum, what's going to happen to him? Somebody who knows the system. But it is kind of a new system, too, with Joe Brady. It's not maybe the same system with Ken Dorsey or Brian Daboll, of course. So if you're going to do that, if Mitch Trubisky, let's say Mitch Trubisky, you know what, they think they're going to be out maybe 2 weeks in the regular season. Are you really going out and getting a guy that's going to get up to speed to be able to be the number 2 anyway in that time over
No.
Ben DiNucci or Anthony Brown?
No, I think in that situation, because of the way the Bills' schedule has pieced itself together, if you figure out Mitch Trubisky is going to miss 2 games, I think you just roll the dice and have Ben DiNucci be your practice squad elevation. You have Mitch Trubisky on your roster, and you have Ben DiNucci as your practice squad guy. He can be the backup quarterback, and you just really hope that Josh Allen stays healthy. But if it's anything longer than that, because like the first 2 games are within 5 days of each other. So it's kind of hard. I kind of lump those together as the start of the season. And then to me, you get the mini bye week after week 2, where I'm like, okay, well, if Mitch Trubisky can be back for week 3, then I think this is what you go into it knowing, and this is what you do. But man, if it's looking bleak for week 3 and week 4, then you have something to figure out, whether it's putting him on IR or whether it's going out and making a move.
So without all that withstanding, that they wouldn't necessarily be the type of level quality quarterbacks you'd want as your number 2. Let's give some credit to Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown. 11 for 15 for DiNucci, 11 for 12 for Brown. They both had DiNucci had a 106 rating, Brown had a 102 rating. Good job by those guys, right? I mean, that was a nice job by them today.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice job. It was a nice job against backups and third stringers.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to figure out is which they are too. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And they've just got thrown into this. So props to them for stepping up in the way that they did. But it's finding somebody who would at least be able to tread water against starters and against a higher level of competition. Because that's what I think ultimately is the job of the backup quarterback. Can you tread water while the other guy is getting better? And that's not something I would feel confident with either of those players.
Okay, so the game itself, Frank Gore Jr., 101 yards on 18 carries. Unfortunately, he gets hurt on his final carry when he breaks the 100-yard threshold. He told us after the game in the locker room he'll think he'll be fine. He got rolled under a little bit. His leg got caught under him. So we don't think there's any issue there. We'll see where it goes. 5.6 yards a carry. Once again, the Bills' run game was very good. 6.1 yards a carry overall. Darrington Evans, 5 yards a carry. Even DiNucci and Brown got into the yak. KJ Hamler, his 3 carries averaged 7 yards a carry. But the Bills' run game through 2 weeks now, and this was even against the starting unit for the Panthers. It wasn't great necessarily, but I thought the Bills' run game now, after a very poor performance against the Bears, really makes me feel a lot better over the last 2 weeks.
Well, it couldn't have been worse than the first game against the Bears.
Right.
That was really, really bad. So I do think that they have taken a step in the right direction. I think they've been doing a good job of running the ball. I also think they've done a good job running the ball when defenses know that they're going to run the ball. It's not like you're really worried about one of these guys burning you over the top for a big play. So you're probably cheating towards stopping the run a little bit. At least that's what I'm assuming these defenses are doing. So yes, I feel slightly better about it than I did, but I don't feel like, okay, that's going to be the Bills' bread and butter or anything like that. I just feel like, okay, it looks more like an NFL caliber run game should. And I think that that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be a slightly above average unit at rushing the football.
I mean, they're going to be primarily a Josh Allen team anyway. We know that. And Josh Allen only had a couple of series early in the preseason against the Chicago Bears where he played. Otherwise, no time on task with his wide receivers. Now Curtis Samuel's been out, Marquez Valdes-Scantling's been out, but he really hasn't had a chance to be able to do that. How concerned are you about that? About the fact that the Bills just haven't had a lot of time with Allen and all these new receivers, even though really the plan was to play him and them against the Steelers, but the rain hit, the lack of warm-ups hit. They didn't do that. And then because of all the injuries around the roster, Sean McDermott said, I can't do it against Carolina either because I got to have self-preservation.
I feel like it would be hypocritical for me to say that I'm concerned about it because I'm the guy who says don't play the starters in the preseason because I just think that the risk is so much greater than the reward. So for me to say, hey, I'm overly concerned about this, I would be lying. I mean, the team that they're playing in the preseason, or to start the regular season, the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray didn't play at all in the preseason. So they're going to be dealing with the exact same things. So
exactly right.
I guess like marginally concerned just because what I'm more concerned about is the injuries than I am about them not getting snaps together in the preseason. But I will say, just from listening to Sean McDermott, you were there on Thursday before this preseason game. I was there on Thursday. The way he talked about Curtis Samuel and MVS, made it feel like those guys are going to be ready for the start of the year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the point you bring, I was going to say the same thing about the Cardinals. If we could talk all we want about, the Bills' lack of time on task with, Josh Allen and the offense and the starters not playing, their week one opponent had less than them. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, I'm looking at their stats right now. I don't see James Conner with one touch. I do not see Marvin Harrison Jr. with one target. I don't see Trey McBride with a target. I don't think they played anybody, Matt. Like, to me, at least you get a game against another team that is actually going to have less time on task than you did. And maybe that's their one game to kind of wrap up before you play against the Miami Dolphins, who didn't play their starters that much either because you play them 5 days later.
Yeah. And I mean, the Cardinals too, like the Bills have suffered a massive injury with Matt Milano. It is a season-altering injury in some capacity. The Cardinals are banged up too. First off, it looks like Zay Jones is going to be suspended, and he's a starting receiver for them. He's not a game changer, but he's the third option on that team. So it's not like he doesn't have any impact. I saw today their first-round pick, Darius Robinson, is injured and is going to likely miss the first several weeks of the year, could potentially start the season on IR. And they had a pass rusher, I think a couple weeks ago, tear an ACL, and they're out for the entire season. So they're banged up and they don't have time on task. So if you're rusty, you're probably also going against a rusty, banged up team that you better be. I think the Cardinals are going to be sneaky decent this year, but at home against the Cardinals with the schedule you have, you better shake off the rust and figure it out quick, because this is about as close to a game you should win as you have on your schedule.
We asked for questions, as you usually do, on X/Twitter for this, and a lot of the questions were about the running backs. We'll get to them specifically and what that might look like after the game that Frank Gore put together. But on the receivers, I want to ask you, Tyrell Shavers playing as early as he did and then not playing later, is that an indication to you? Is that an indication that he's on this team?
Yeah, I think the less we saw certain guys on Saturday, the more indicative it is that they are going to be on the team.
Yeah.
The Tyrell Shavers, I feel like what I've said for the last couple of weeks is he was the best of the rest. I feel like there was a pretty clear drop off after their top 5 guys, but just because of the injuries that they're dealing with and also just the modern NFL, always felt like 6 kind of was the number that they were going to keep. And of the guys like Justin Shorter, like KJ Hamler, like formerly Chase Claypool, he was the one who was the most consistent and most impressive over the course of the summer. So yeah, I do think he's going to make the team. We talked to him after the game and it was just like, what was today like for you? He said this was a Super Bowl. It's like, this was my Super Bowl because I knew it was on the line for me. And I'm sure he really would have liked to had that one in the corner of the end zone back. I feel like most people will disagree. I think that's just as much on him as it is on DiNucci. I feel like he slowed down a little bit. I think he thought that DiNucci was going to float one into him, and DiNucci threw it with pace, and he slowed down a little bit, anticipating just, a very easy routine catch. If he doesn't slow down a hint, then I still think it's a fairly easy routine catch. It needs to be a better throw, but probably one he wants back.
I think that's fair. I think both guys can take a little bit of blame for it, but it's one you have to make. You have to make that. Speaking of having to make, Tyler Bass. You have to make a 51-yarder. Sean McDermott even said it in the press conference, Matt. Afterwards, he said that's a kick that he knows he has to make, and we have to have. I mean, he was 5 for 5 heading into the game. He made a kick, made him 6 for 6. Then later in the game, trying a 51-yarder, misses it. Again, wide right from the left hash. It has been for a while, not even becoming, a very big concern with Buffalo Bills fans. But they're not just going to move on from Tyler Bass. I think you and I would both agree they're not going to do that. Because I think they actually still believe in him, even though they know that he's struggling right now and they're trying to get his confidence back. And they know that they have a kicker on their hand that they, have a lot of comfort in when he's right. He just hasn't been right lately. And also, the money really matters. Like, you can't just get rid of Tyler Bass. You'd be eating $7 million of dead cap space over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, for a kicker. For a kicker. This is actually one of the questions. We'll answer more of these later, but my former colleague, Nick Filipowski, who's now over at the Williamsville School District, he said, what's the plan for Bass? I think the plan for Bass is that he's the kicker right now, and that they probably just have Jack Browning on their practice squad because he can do a little bit of both, and he can be your insurance policy. This is a psychological question more than anything else. Is it better for somebody's performance to have somebody working behind them, trying to take their job? Or is it better to say that you have full confidence in this person and then hope that they perform without having to do that? Like, is Tyler Bass a better kicker if they go out and sign a veteran and have them on the practice squad? Or is he a better kicker if they just continue to say that they have confidence in him and that they don't think it's going to be an issue? Because that's what they can say, but I don't think they believe it, because I don't believe it. I don't think anybody believes it right
Believes
now
what?
that he's going to not have these issues. Week 1, hypothetical right now, 49-yard kick for the game. You're down 2 with no time left. I think a year ago, every Bills fan would have been like, yeah, he's like an 80%, 90% kicker from that range. I have no faith that he's going to make those now.
Oh, I don't disagree with that, but I mean, I don't have no faith. I think it's, oh my God, you're like, oh,
It's like a 50, it's like a 50-50, it's like a 50-50 shot, basically.
But they're still putting him out there to kick that, right?
Yes,
it's not like
they
they're
are.
not doing it.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are.
that's what it boils down to. Whether you have faith or not, they're still doing it. Let me ask you a question. You think they would sign Jack Browning back on the practice squad? Because he hasn't been with the team in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Why not?
Well, because he hasn't been with the team. I mean, I think to do that, I mean, that would be a sign. If you suddenly do sign another kicker to come in on the practice squad, that is definitely hot seat time, I think, in some capacity for Tyler Bass. And they kind of moved on from Jack Browning pretty quickly, which tells me maybe they felt that they didn't want Bass to have to be looking over his shoulder. It is a tough situation now, I think, because the Bills I do think they believe in him, but they're also probably just as scared as everybody else about what you just said. Big kick, big moment, like you got to have it, and he just hasn't.
Yeah, the problem.
You're a golfer. It's like a golf swing, right? Like he's just the yips. I mean, the confidence, the yips, whatever you want to call it. Now, I will say, he was 5 for 5 heading into today. And then he made another. He was 6 for 6 in preseason before the miss, but in practices he has struggled, and sometimes we don't know. Is he working on something? Are they trying something new? We don't know that. But overall, the percentage in practice, I think I heard someone say today it was like 16 of 24 or something when you count it all up. I'm not really sure. But, it hasn't not been great.
This is the thing with Tyler Bass that makes this so interesting. He has all the talent in the world for a kicker, right? I have no doubt in no lack of faith in just the talent. I think it's all mental. I think it's all he missed a big kick in a huge game that, even though that's not why they lost, ended their season, had a bunch of issues down the stretch. And I think he is now trying to get over that and is thinking about that stuff more than thinking about all of the big kicks that he has made for this team. Mm-hmm. But the problem was, this was a slow build to this point. You think back to the Eagles game last year. They lost the Eagles game because Tyler Bass missed 2 kicks, and Jake Elliott made a kick that was 59 yards at the buzzer in a monsoon. And then the week before they lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs, Tyler Bass missed 2 kicks against the Steelers, but the Bills kind of blew him out, so it wasn't really that big of a story. And then surely in the end of that game, he misses the kick. So, there were there were notable misses.
And because you pointed out, like, the schedule this year, there's some tough games. You're going to need some big kicks. You're going to need some close hits. These are going to be close games. Mm-hmm. You're going to need some of them. So it's definitely something that this team has to be thinking about in whatever capacity they're going to approach it before Tuesday. It's all going to be really, fascinating to see. I don't think that they're going to move on from Tyler Bass, like I said.
I don't think they do anything.
But I do wonder like you said, if they bring someone in maybe eventually, to be on the practice squad. All right, let's shift it over to the defensive side. We'll talk about Joe Andreessen and his chances. What did you see on Saturday? Did anything change your mind on Saturday, Joe Andreessen on or off the final 53?
Nothing changed my mind. I don't think he played nearly as clean of a game as he did against the Steelers.
Agreed.
We talked about the error on the first touchdown, whether that was him or whether that wasn't on him. Now you pay attention to him. Now you're looking for him. And now it felt like when you were paying attention to him, there were misses as many as there were like big splash plays. He had one where he shoots up the middle on special teams on a kick coverage that he missed that he probably should have had. He had another missed tackle in the open field that he probably would want back. But I think he makes the team. I really do. All that said, I think he's going to be on the 53-man roster.
Okay, so I know we don't necessarily want to or go down the road of every position here, but so what do the linebackers look like for you then? Like, how do you do it?
Would you like to hear my 5 linebackers that I picked on WKBW.com?
I would love to.
So here, this is a good exercise. We can do this with specifically linebackers because this is the one that I was the most torn up on. I sat there the entire day at the game. You're having this ready to go, and you're like, does Andreessen go on this? Does he not? So the linebackers that I have them keeping 5 linebackers.
Okay.
They are Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Eddie Ulofoshio, Nicholas Morrow, and Joe Andreessen. So the, quote, notable cuts would be Balin Spector and Deion Jones. To me, this is the conversation we've had on the podcast before. I feel like it comes down to Spector and Andreessen, and they'll go with the guy who's got a little less, experience, but also probably more upside at this point in his career.
More availability for sure. I think it's about availability for Spector. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm kind of with you. Like I like it. That's probably it might be where I go, but I would tell you, I think in this scenario, Balin Spector gets put on IR as one of those 2 that you can designate to return, putting on the last day of cuts. The last day. So you get 2 guys that you can designate at that moment who don't have to make the 53. I don't think that's Matt Milano. I think Matt Milano, you carry him on the roster on 53, and then you put him on IR a little bit later because you just don't know if he's coming back. The guys that you put on, the 2 guys you're going to use on the final day, you must declare at the time that he's going to be coming back. You don't want to waste it on a Matt Milano for a better term because you don't know. So I think Matt Milano gets carried and then he gets put on IR. I think Balin Spector might be an IR candidate that day. I don't think he gets outright released.
Okay. Before we finish up the linebacker, who do you think would be the other candidate for that specifically?
Mitch Trubisky.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, can you do that with Mitch Trubisky? But then you would probably have to make a corresponding move unless you're just putting Ben DiNucci on the roster, right?
Oh yeah, if you got to have 2 quarterbacks. If you put Mitch Trubisky on IR that final day, then I think Ben DiNucci is.
I just don't see that.
Or Anthony Brown. Like I said, I'm still on the. I think Anthony Brown has a shot. I don't think he'll. I just would keep that in mind. But no, it's probably Ben DiNucci, and he would have to be the number 2. So you're gonna find another quarterback somehow because if you release DiNucci, then you're just saying we're gonna find one who gets, who we can claim. You're right. You could do that. Right?
Yes, absolutely. With linebackers specifically, this goes back to the point that you made a little bit ago. Deion Jones and Ulofoshio were the ones on the field at the end of the game. They took Andreessen off before they took the other guys off, which to me was a sign that maybe he is slightly ahead of them. Now, I think the tie goes to the actual draft pick, which in this case would be Ulofoshio. So that's why I'm including him, even with the injury this summer, even with the lack of production we have seen. I just feel like he is going to be on the roster. So then it's, Balin Spector, Deion Jones, and Andreessen. I think if you're keeping Nicholas Morrow, you're probably not keeping Deion Jones. I think that this is one where you probably want upside, you want youth, you want availability. And I think if you're going to keep one, you keep Morrow. Just get a lot of time on task last year.
He hasn't been available.
No, I know. But I think that they would, don't you feel like, the guy played a lot last year.
You're the one who said something I really agreed with last week. You said, can't you find a Nicholas Morrow pretty much anywhere?
I feel like you can find, this is what I'll say. Of the positions on this roster, this is the one that I am far and away the most concerned about. If I was Brandon Beane, this is what I would be trying to do.
Really?
Yes, really. I'm
more than safety?
Yeah.
Not me. I'm concerned about safety simply because of the lack of reps for the guys who have been out.
I'm not concerned about safety because I know in 2 weeks Micah Hyde's going to be on the team.
Oh my God, here we go again.
So I'm not as concerned about safety. I am genuinely concerned. What if something happens to Terrell Bernard?
Right.
You're so like if something happened besides Josh Allen, you are so screwed. If you're starting Nicholas Morrow and Dorian Williams.
It's a huge drop, but I just don't think linebacker moves the needle like other positions like that. You can get guys, you can play linebacker in the NFL, and you can have different packages and sub packages. You can get away with it. I just don't think you get beat over the top because of a safety or a corner and you're not good at that position. It's 6 points. It's not the case at linebacker. You might have to work through some issues like they did last year, but Matt, I know Bernard was there, but they used Tyrell Dodson most of the year last year, right? Yes, I agree. There's a big drop. I'm not nearly as concerned. I think you can go into a season with Dorian Williams and somebody else and go, okay, it's not going to be great, but we can do some things to kind of mitigate this.
I think that of the positions on the roster, it is the one that I think that they are one thing away from happening to that could be catastrophic towards the outcome of the season. Even though I know from like a positional value standpoint, it's not the most important position in the 2024 NFL, but I think Terrell Bernard was really, really good as a rookie, like exceptionally good.
Second
But
year.
it's not, second year. But it's not unrealistic to think he could take a small step back. And you're already now without Matt Milano, and you're without, you've got a very unproven Dorian Williams. So I don't know. That's why I think I give the edge to Morrow, just because I do have questions with those guys. And I know that he played a bunch of snaps for the Eagles last year.
He did. He had 100 tackles for the Bears the year before that. But, this is a player that really hasn't been a starter his whole career and a high-level starter, but a guy that can play. And I will tell you, the reason why they like Morrow a lot is his flexibility. He can play Mike and he can play Will, and that's a big deal, right? You want to have guys who can do both those things. Joe Andreessen actually has worked at the Will linebacker spot a little bit on the weak side, mostly Mike middle, but he has worked outside. So I do think that they at least are thinking about that. All right, well, I say safety is a concern. I might be concerned about wide receiver because of Curtis Samuel more than I am at safety, because I think these guys are coming back. I'm just worried about the reps.
Yeah.
Right? Who are the safeties on this team? Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, right? Those four.
Yeah.
Are you keeping the Cam Lewis as 5? Is that it? Then we're done, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I had 4 on mine, and I had Cam Lewis listed as corner.
Okay.
But fine. Yes, I just because of the position flexibility, I think that those are the guys that you're keeping. I don't feel great about that either, for what it's worth. I feel worse about linebacker than I do about safety. I'll just say this before we get to it. The position that when I put it on paper, I was the most confident in, besides quarterback, was actually corner. Like, I think that they have I think that they have all of a sudden a pretty impressive room of cornerbacks.
You know what? And I'll tell you, that might be partly because, and I don't know, did you do this exercise like today or during the game?
I had a skeleton of what I thought it was going to look like, and then I just kind of made some tweaks, knowing like I had Daquan Hardy on the team regardless. But then, he played on the boundary today, and he actually had some nice reps on the boundary.
Listen, I think they're putting him on the boundary because they want to make sure, hey, if we're going to keep him as a return man, we need to make sure he can also play a little defense because he counts as a number, right? On corner. I agree with you. I think Daquan Hardy is on this team. He has been like their only punt returner for the last 2 weeks. He made a great decision. The best play he made today was a play he didn't make.
Yes, twice. He let the one go into the end zone on the punt, and he let the one kickoff go out of bounds to get the ball at the 40. And he was getting ready to field it with 1 foot out of bounds, but it ended up bouncing out anyway. So big brain moment from him, knowing that if he would have touched the ball with 1 foot out of bounds, he would have got it at the 40. So yes, I think that he is firmly on the, but sorry to get sidetracked.
That's okay.
Jamarcus Ingram has been awesome.
Hold on. Let me get to Hardy real quick. I want you to get Jamarcus Ingram. Let me just say something about Hardy. I got to tell you this quick story.
Yeah.
So he's returning the punt. And, he's had some kind of questionable decisions and fielding some punts he shouldn't. And I'm standing there on the sidelines. He lets that one go. Matt, it was super cool. The sideline, like starters, they were like, yeah, Day, great job. Like almost like he had one he took to the house or something. And he never touched it. And they were all like pumping him up and how happy they were that he made that great decision. I think that says a lot about everybody knowing that you're right there, buddy. You just got to show that you can do this and think this through. And I think he did that on Saturday.
I mean, I think he's had a strong second half of the preseason on top of what I thought was a strong summer, and that's with the returns, but also just with the way he's played defense. I think Jamarcus Ingram has been an incredibly pleasant surprise. I think Kaiir Elam is trending in the right direction, and I think Russell Douglas and Christian Benford are just dudes. And we're not even talking about, I know he's not a prototype. Taron Johnson is so good. Taron Johnson, I have like 3 players who this summer I've just been baffled at how good they've been. And it is Taron Johnson, Greg Rousseau, and Ed Oliver. Those 3 guys,
by the way,
all three on defense. I feel like all 3 of those guys have at times just been dominant. So Taron Johnson, Russell Douglas, Christian Benford, and then those guys behind him, I like that room a lot.
Can we just give a little love to Corey Couch for the game he played on Saturday?
Good performance. Practice squad performance.
He sealed himself on the practice squad. I like that. But you know what? To your point of the depth at corner, that really helps when you can have a guy in the practice squad who you can bring along as a rookie and say, look at what we did here. And, this guy can be a part of our organization. And if something were to happen and we need a guy, like he played well. He had 9 tackles. He led everybody in the whole game with tackles. I thought Corey Couch might have been the best defender on the field for the Buffalo Bills overall. I think he did a really nice job. No, he's not making the 53, but you're right. Practice squad guy. Okay. I think Jamarcus Ingram might actually be your number 3 corner. Not even your number 4 at this point. I think Kyrie Elam could be the number 4. Now, this is because I think Jamarcus Ingram has just played really well. You say Kyrie Elam's trending in the right direction. I agree for his career. I don't know if it is necessarily for the preseason. I think he had a really nice, strong start to camp. I don't know if he's done anything that stand out necessarily, good or bad. It's kind of leveled off. Is there a thought at all that you think they could look to shop Kyrie Elam after the preseason he's had and thinking that his stock might be as high as possible?
For what? That's my thing. Unless it's a player.
Because if you like Daquan Hardy that much and he's been playing outside, I just wonder if that's one of the reasons they might do that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just don't think it's worth it because I do think that that's a position that sometimes you get banked up on. And I don't think you want to be going that far down the well. I just don't think that the return would be nearly high enough for what the cost was for the player. I think you hold on to him for as long as, this year and next year, basically, just to see what ends up ultimately happening. And then you probably move on from him. Unless you can get like a player, unless you can get maybe a team's got an extra linebacker that you really like, or a player in a similar situation that was a high pick that hasn't worked out, but I wouldn't move him.
I don't think either of us would disagree. Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Juwan Smoot make this team.
Yep.
At Oliver, Daquan Jones, Dwayne Carter. From there, what do you have at edge or defensive tackle? I just rattled off 4 edge and 3 tackle names.
Okay, so I have Javon Solomon making the team. I have Austin. Did you say Austin Johnson's name?
I did not, but I agree with you.
Okay, so
I have to make sure. Yes,
I have 9 guys on the defensive line: Rousseau, Oliver, Daquan, Von, AJ, Austin Johnson, Dwayne Smoot, Javon Solomon, and Dwayne Carter. That's 9. So that's only keeping 4 true defensive tackles. But I think Smoot is kind of 4.5. So you get to keep him as an edge rusher, but you can also just plan on moving him inside when you need to, which is something that they've done this summer.
So no Kingsley Jonathan?
No. And he was playing pretty late in the game. Yeah. I think that he's, another practice squad player. The thing that they have to figure out is, so do they keep 6 edge rushers instead of what I have them keeping 5, and then maybe they keep one less offensive lineman? On my list that I made, I had them keeping 10 offensive linemen. I know some people will do this exercise and probably have them keeping 9. And if that's the way you do it, then you would probably get to either Kingsley Jonathan or Balin Spector or like somebody in that kind of wheelhouse.
I wouldn't even rule out Casey Tuhill, to be quite honest with you. I mean, he could be if that's the extra guy. Part of the issue with defensive end, though, is an edge. Von's not going to be a 60% snap guy, No. So because he's only in the rotation a little bit, or he's a pass rush specialist, whatever you want to say, you might have to secure yourself with an extra guy there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Honestly, that's a really good point, because I think if I would have had this conversation before I did the exercise, I would have probably changed my tune a little bit. But
that's why I wonder if maybe Kingsley and I'll also say this. I want to talk about trades in a minute. If you are going to move anyone off the roster, that would probably be the position where you have the most numbers with the highest floor. Defensive end.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one thing I will say as a counterpoint to all of this, I'm very confident that you could get one of Casey Tuhill or Kingsley Jonathan to your practice squad. Might not be able to get both of them there, but I think you could definitely get one of them there.
Yeah, Kingsley Jonathan actually was claimed a couple of years ago. He was plucked by the Bears. Remember that? He played for a little bit, and then he came back to Buffalo
and played good against the Bears.
I know. That's exactly right. We did not do the numbers and names at wide receiver. How many do you have them keeping?
6. It was Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, MVS, Tyrell Shavers. Those are the 6 that I had them keeping. So cutting
I'm good with that. I like that.
KJ
I think
Hamler.
yep,
KJ
I think
Hamler
that sounds
probably
right.
is a practice squad player.
Yeah.
Justin Shorter or Andy Isabella, probably practice squad players. All of the other ones. I could see them keeping Deion Kane on the practice squad. He had some nice plays in this game. But other than that, not anything crazy.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
didn't. We skipped over safety because of me. Do you want to flesh that conversation out a little bit too of just safety?
No, I
before we
agree
move
with a lot
on?
of what you said about safety. Rapp, Edwards, Bishop, Hamlin, and Lewis. Those are my 5.
Okay.
I do think that Kendall Williamson did some nice things in
Yeah.
camp.
Mhm.
And I do think that Kareem Jackson had a heck of a play on 4th down, by the way,
He
on
did. He
Saturday,
got to that
right?
ball. He got to that ball quick.
If there's anybody that would be the odd man out, it'd have to be DeMar Hamlin, I would think. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else you would count there as out.
That's tough. I thought about it a little bit of like, would you keep Kareem Jackson instead of DeMar Hamlin?
DeMar.
But I don't think they would. I don't think they would. I mean, it was like
I mean,
2 weeks ago. It was like 2 weeks ago that DeMar was taking starter snaps.
and
At
at the same
safety.
time that Kareem Jackson didn't have a job, 32
Yeah,
teams in the league, right?
that's what I mean.
So that's probably right. I agree with you at wide receiver. The names you gave at wide receiver are probably correct. I agree. Samuel Coleman, Shakir Hollins, MVS, Tyrell Shavers. I think those are your 6. I don't think that Zach Davidson takes a job away from Quentin Morris, because to me, Quentin Morris comes back on time. He does more. Zach Davidson had a really nice game, by the way, on Saturday. Nice one-handed catch. Trey McKitty had a really nice catch in the end zone. Good for him on a 2-point conversion. I will say, though, that I was looking at this. Oh, yeah. Just a little love for KJ Hamler. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job
Yeah.
on Saturday. Good job. Right? Like he gets called on to be a running back because Evans and Gore out. And he goes in, and all he does is carry the ball 3 times for 15 yards, 5 yards a carry. So good job by KJ Hamler.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take somebody's job. I really hope that KJ Hamler is in this organization for some capacity, because he is a treat. He is as much of what Isaiah McKenzie was, just maybe even more. Like, he is so much fun. You need to talk to somebody. You want to hear somebody make a joke. You want to just laugh. You can go talk to KJ Hamler. So those are the kind of guys that are really, really fun to get to know and to talk to. So those guys in the locker room, I am always here for.
Yeah, and I thought that was really a great job by him. Here's a guy that, he's been in the league a little bit, a few years. But he just did whatever was asked. And Sean McDermott said after the game, when Joe Brady said, "Hey, might need you to go in," he's like, "Let's go. Let's do this. Let's run the ball." So that was really cool. All right, running back. Let me ask you this.
Okay. Yeah.
Cook, Davis, Johnson, right? Or are you leaning now at all? Are you not leaning Gore on the 53, right?
No.
Okay.
I had a hard time. I didn't know, like, Frank Gore Jr. or like Christian Wade. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I've got those 3.
If you have to choose one that is on the practice squad, is it Frank Gore Jr. or Darrington Evans?
It's both, but Frank Gore Jr.
I don't know if they might have both, and I wouldn't doubt it, but I wouldn't completely but you never know. They might
Frank Gore
only
Jr.
have one. Okay. I'm with you there. Okay. Here's since we're on this page, we're going down this road. Let me ask you, does Frank Gore Jr. get claimed by any other team after today?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I've thought because I thought about, okay, does he get claimed and Ty Johnson doesn't? They were in a kind of similar situation with Ty Johnson when they got him last year or whatever it was. I don't think so. I mean, 3rd preseason game, yards against 3rd stringers, looks good. I think the reason he doesn't is because he's not exceptional at any one thing. He's just good at everything. I feel like some of these guys get poached because of traits, because of game-changing speed or unbelievable size. He doesn't have that. He's an undersized, average speed running back who, just happens to be. He's obviously his dad is a conversation of if he's a Hall of Famer, but he plays a lot like his dad does, where you're like, how is this guy actually gaining yards? It doesn't make sense.
His dad was at the game, saw him in the locker room after the game. It was really cool.
So cool.
Back in 2019, his dad would take out his phone and show me highlights of his son playing high school football in Florida. And I thought that was super cool. And then his dad retweeted a touchdown and said, "That's my boy." And I thought that was so cool and so prideful. Now, look, I'm going to agree with you about something and disagree about another thing. I'm going to agree with you that you get him in the practice squad. He's not going to get claimed. I'm going to disagree for the reason. I think he is the kind of running back, if I'm looking at another team and go, dude, I could put this guy in my organization. He might be, I don't care what his size, speed is. His vision is incredible. What I saw today, his vision was incredible. The reason why he's not going to another team and getting claimed, Matt, most teams are just going to keep their own guys who they've developed here, and they're not going to want to bring another guy get up to speed. A lot of teams have a guy like Frank Gore they like. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to – you're sitting there going, boy, I really like that kid, but why would I bring him in and take away this other guy that I've been developing? He knows my playbook. And I got to put him right on my 53, and he doesn't know my he doesn't know my plays.
I mean,
so I wouldn't do that.
Would you in any way, shape, or form keep him instead of Ty Johnson? Do you feel comfortable enough with Ray Davis to know that he could be your third?
I don't think I would, because A, I think you can get him to the practice squad, and B, Ty Johnson's a kick returner for me as well. And he's played in big moments and big games. And I think the Bills, like what Ty Johnson brings. So I probably wouldn't. I would say I think the Bills certainly will not do that.
Yeah. I agree.
Right? Okay. And then the last one, offensive line. You said you had 10.
I had 9.
Correct?
Or excuse me, I had 10. I had 10.
You do have 10.
I had 10.
Okay. Left to right, Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Spencer Brown. We know that. Ryan Vandermark and Alec Anderson are clearly the swing tackle and swing interior guys in this team. That gets you 7. Where does your 8, 9, and 10 come from?
La'el Collins, Cedric Van Pran Granger, and Tylen Grable. I think that I give Cedric Van Pran Granger and Tylen Grable the benefit of being draft picks this year, who have not done anything to show me that they don't deserve to at least be on the roster. They could absolutely move on from one of them, and I will not be the one who's throwing my hands in the air and saying, oh my God, this is absolute disaster. But I think that if it's close, you always give the edge to those guys. And then La'el Collins, based off of NFL experience and also just position flexibility. Now, there's other guys who have that, but I do think they like the idea of having an experienced veteran when all of those other guys who are backups are inexperienced players.
I can't remember a time the Bills have cut a 5th-round pick in this regime. I just can't.
No, they did the Justin Shorter thing last year where they redshirted him, but I don't think they've cut someone.
Exactly right. Was Voshan Joseph maybe a 5th round? They did the same thing to him. He went on they're not cutting Cedric Van Pran Granger, a 5th-round pick. It would pretty much be a pretty big upset after they've already tried to get younger, right? And what they're doing here and reset the financials. So I think Cedric Van Pran Granger is on this team, even though Alec Anderson has been the number 2 center. And partly, unfortunately, for Will Clapp is because he is in concussion protocol. I don't know what happens with Will Clapp here. I think the La'el Collins discussion is interesting, though. I don't know if he's done enough, and he seems like he's kind of fighting through, just trying to be on the field sometimes, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that would be the one that wouldn't shock me at all. They move on from Collins. It's just then you got a lot of young guys as your depth people.
And he knows every position, right? I mean, guard and tackle on left and right. And there's value in that.
I think there is value in that. I think that it wasn't that long ago he was playing football at a pretty high level. Now, I know that he has lost a step and he's not the same player he once was, but I think just having that in your locker room is helpful, especially when everybody else is pretty new.
And then Tylen Grable is really interesting. I never really thought about him making the team until recently, but you're right. He has been on the field and he has been taking reps, and it feels like he's kind of trending in that direction. So to me, he's probably a guy you keep. And then it might be between Collins and Grable for a last spot. Maybe you keep them both. I'm not really sure, but I think he's in that bucket as well. All right. I have 2 fun questions for you about everything that's going to happen on Tuesday, but let's get to questions from fans. What do you got for me?
Okay, this one's from Kevin Borowitz.
Okay.
How is it possible this team wins the Super Bowl? I have an answer for this. I don't know if you do, but I can start.
Sure, go ahead.
They have the 2nd best player in football.
Yeah, I mean,
that is how they win a Super Bowl. I legitimately think that there is I know there's the NFL top 100, and you can have the conversation about Lamar and Burrow and all these guys, and I think they're all exceptionally talented. I think Josh Allen in the playoffs can go toe-to-toe with literally anybody. So my thing with this team this year, hard schedule, not a very talented roster compared to years past, just get in. And if you get in, your quarterback gives you a chance in every game that you play. Imagine they get in as a 7 seed. Could you imagine the 2 seed having to go up against the Bills and Josh Allen? When the Bills have been the 2 seed, they've played Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson and Mac Jones. Imagine if it's the Bills as the 7 seed and you got to go play against Josh Allen. Just get in, and I think your quarterback can do anything against anybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say the other reason is because it's the NFL. Injuries happen around the league. And, I just was, I mean, I think when you have a war of attrition, you get to a big spot, playoff game, couple bounces, couple injuries. I think that's very possible for those reasons. And it's not easy by any stretch, but yeah, that's how.
Here's an interesting one. What are some of the lesser known aspects of how cut down day works? Do the coaches speak with every player they cut? Do they reach out to teams ahead of time to talk about players, stuff like that? I think that's a really interesting question because there is a lot that goes into it. Do you want to start or do you want me to?
I'll start. The Buffalo Bills, the way most teams do it, and I know the Bills do it, is Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane meet with every player that they're going to release. They believe that they should talk to that player. It's a very emotional moment for them. They're going to tell that player be honest with them. Here's why, here's what you can work on. And here's what we'd like to do. If you could, if you're going to be around and we want to bring you back and practice squad, but that's how it goes. I mean, it's not just a phone call. Hey, you're done. Bring your playbook. Now, maybe some organizations do that. The Bills, they are an organization that wants to make sure that, they kind of do right by the player because the player is going to be in a very, emotional state and needs to be told what's going on.
Yeah, I think that they're incredibly transparent. I think that their pro scouts are already doing all of the research around the league, as they have been, about guys who could potentially be released that the Bills think would make sense for them, or about potential trades that they need to look into. I think that some guys are blindsided by this news, but most of them aren't. These guys are not in a cave. They're looking up stuff. They're looking at these projections that we do and that a lot of people do. They know what's going on. So I think some of the people are going in expecting it and honestly like hoping that they've won a job on the practice squad. I think that that's really how some people approach it. And then others are obviously, it's a really crappy day. We've been there before on cut down day, and it's at times the highest of the highs for people. Remember the Quentin Morris when we found out he made the team and his locker was spelled wrong and you pointed it out and he was just like, I didn't even care. I just wanted to make the team. And like, same thing when Reggie Gilliam ended up making it a couple years ago. And like when Ryan Vandermark and Alec Anderson made it last year and just like the jubilation of just the enjoyment and excitement. And then there's obviously guys who have kind of played their last bit of football. So it's a very emotional day for teams.
No doubt about it. Any others you have?
Florida barbecue and grill, pulled pork, brisket, or ribs.
Ooh, I'm a brisket guy.
I'm of those I would say ribs. This is from Captain Clutch. 1 to 10 level of confidence in Bass to start the season. So I guess for the sake of this, we'll say 10 is extremely confident and 1 is not confident at all.
5.
I was going to say
50, man.
I was going to say 4.
Well, here, wait. I think this has to come with some nuance. Confidence to kick a 43-yarder? 6.
6.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, I think there's a line of demarcation. What are you confident in? After 45, going down to probably about a 4.
Yeah, but the issue is that his selling point was his range.
Yeah,
and his power. So I need him to be under 45.
Still has that power. It just hasn't been as accurate.
It's like Fulton Reed, Mighty Ducks. It's like 1 out of 5 with the slap shot, like every once in a while. So this is a good one. Surprise make, surprise cut. You got anybody? I mean, we kind of talked about these.
Surprise make on the team. Surprise cut. Let me look. And surprise cut. Like surprise cut is always a tough one. I don't know if I would even predict someone's going to get cut. I just think that if they were, it would be kind of a surprise and to most people, but I could see it happening. I think I would go with Bail Inspector for that. I would think, and because of what Joe Andreessen has done, because of Bail Inspector's availability or lack of availability, but then again, the injury, and I just wonder still about Kyrie Elam and where they are with him. And I think he's had a better camp, but I just, with what Daquan Hardy's been able to do a little bit, put him on the boundary. I think about him a little bit for this. So I wonder about that. That would be cut. I'll think about make in a second. What do you got for either or?
I guess Lyle Collins.
Yeah.
I think that, they gave him decent money to go out and add him as a key depth offensive lineman, and I think he's going to make it, but I won't be shocked if he doesn't. So to me, that would be the one who I would say could potentially be the surprise cut. Surprise make.
I mean, you already had Tyler Grable. He's not a surprise make for you for most people, like coming into the camp. I think by now, if you said that to most people at start of camp or after the draft, that Tyler Grable's going to make it, that'd be a surprise, I think.
Yeah, but I also think surprise has to move the meter with like a casual fan. I don't know if a casual fan is like, ooh, Tyler Grable made the team. I think it would be like, ooh, Damar Hamlin didn't make the team. Like, I think it's got to be somebody with like name recognition or experience to qualify as a surprise. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, like, that's why I don't really know if there's a surprise make. Honestly, surprise make, I think, is Joe Andreessen. Like, that's not anything we would have, right? Not anything we would have anticipated a month ago.
I think about the safety spot a little bit. Like, could Kendall Williamson get a spot over a DeMar or something like that? Could Kareem Jackson, would they do something like that? I'm not really sure. I'd love to Corey Couch, but I just think that's too much of an ask. Like we said, it's probably, practice squad for him. So that's probably where I'm at, with all of those guys. Maybe KJ Hamler still. I don't know.
I know it's kind of a bit. I'm being genuinely serious. I don't think it happens right now. I think Micah Hyde is on this team within like a month. I really do.
I mean, you've been on this thing for so long.
I'm not gonna give it up.
What does he do then? Okay, let's walk this through. He's on the team. He's starting. He's the starting safety.
I don't think it's crazy.
I'm telling you, if he's on this team, he's the starting safety.
I think so.
Next to Taylor Rapp.
Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. I just think that, like, you brought in Mike Edwards, and he hasn't been available at all. I know he's got experience, but he also has never really been a full-time starter. You know who has for this coach? Micah Hyde. I'm not saying that Micah Hyde is the Micah Hyde he was 3 or 4 years ago, but I think he's the best option. If Micah Hyde walked onto their team right now, I think he would be the best safety they have.
That's a fair point. Maybe.
Which is a problem about the room. Which is a problem about the room.
Well, right. It's an indictment on the room. You're right.
Yes.
It also just says how great Micah Hyde's been. I would still be concerned about the injury. I'd be concerned about the age, the injury. How much are they paying him? I'm not really sure. I guess if they can fit him, they can fit him. They would do that. And I'm not sitting here telling you that I don't think the Bills should or will at all have Micah Hyde on the team. I mean, heck, I'm the MC for his charity softball game. I love Micah and his wife.
I was going to say,
I get it. What I'm telling you is I'm reading the Bills and how they're playing it. And it feels like that is just not something they're interested in unless they need to be interested in later in the season.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly how this is going to play out. In less than a week, we are going to be there talking to Brandon Beane for the Wednesday after the cut day. And he's going to do a press conference, and he's going to get asked a bunch of questions. And me or one of my colleagues is going to say, has there been communication with Micah Hyde recently, and where does that stand? And Brandon is going to look us in the eye, and he's going to say, we really respect Micah, what he's done for this organization as a player. He's staying ready. The door is not closed. And we'll keep those conversations between us. That's what's going to happen. And then I'm going to say on the podcast the next day, hey, he's coming back in a couple of weeks.
If they do this, I will give you full credit. And I'm not even like railing against it. I'm just saying I just think that you're too ambitious on it. I give it a chance. I just think it's way too soon.
If Micah's listening to this, if you make the decision, call me, and then I'll break the news. Not Schefter, not Ian Rappaport. Call me. And then I'll put it out there that I've been beating the drum for like 3 months. What were your questions?
Oh, here we go. You ready? I have 2 questions for you. I'm going to give you 2 over-unders. Okay. Over-under, number of trades Brandon Beane makes between now and Tuesday is a half.
Over.
Ooh, how many is he making?
I thought you were going to say 1. I thought you were going to say 1.5.
Okay, 1.5. I'll give you 1.5. How many is he making?
I think he's making 2.
Okay.
I think he's trading somebody That's the thing that could be sneaky. Like trading somebody who we put on this roster to a different team for an asset and then using that asset to go out and get something that they need.
Let's remember they do have a 2nd-round pick from the Minnesota Vikings coming next year. And the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people think will not be very good this year. Mm-hmm. He knows he has a little extra draft capital to play with if he does want to do something to spin it to a player coming to the Bills. Other over-under. How many how many players who are not currently on this 91-man roster will be members of the Buffalo Bills on Wednesday? Over under 2.5.
Under. I think they make
2 trades.
I think one goes out and one comes in.
Okay, but only one different than somebody who's actually on the team now.
That's what I think.
Right.
But I mean, I won't be shocked. There's very little that they could do that would shock me.
Oh, I agree with that. I think that they're in a position where you just never know what's going to happen. Well, we'll find out on Tuesday. Go ahead.
Let me ask you, would you have made the Jahan Dotson trade?
From the Bills?
Yeah.
No.
I don't disagree. It's a hefty price. A day 2 pick.
Wait a minute. It's funny you say that. It's a hefty price. Yet here's what I think is crazy about it. He's a first round pick from 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
It's in division, which should be a premium on paying for him. Maybe it was.
Uh-huh.
And yet the Bills got a better deal for a 30-year-old wide receiver in Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, Stephon Diggs was an all-pro, and Jahan Dotson has done. I know. I just
think it's amazing the Bills got a second-round pick when Jahan Dotson, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago, goes for a third.
If it was a fourth, I would have said it 100 times out of 100. The Bills should have did it. A third is rich. You get a really good player in the third round.
But here's why I say I don't think the Bills should do it. What does Jahan Dotson bring that this team kind of doesn't have already?
Another lottery ticket. I
mean, but when does he get on the field for me to see if I can cash that lottery ticket?
In Buffalo?
He's had less than 600 yards each of his first 2 seasons. Maybe he's going to be great. I actually was a really big Jahan Dotson fan coming out of college in the first year, and I thought, oh my God, this guy could be really good. And maybe circumstance has led that where he could be awesome in Buffalo, but I just feel like he's just another guy on this team like a lot of guys they have.
Is that the position that if you think they made a move, it would be receiver? Or do you think they would do something else like safety, linebacker?
I think if they bring anyone in, the most likely position is wide receiver. I think if they ship anyone out, the most likely position is defensive end.
I think that's a very good point. Defensive end is a very, very good point. Like, could you trade Kingsley Jonathan or could you trade Casey Tuhill for a 7th or something? That's a really, of the positions, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if there's a trade to be made for the Buffalo Bills. I will tell you that Brandon Bean, in our radio production meeting, I asked him about the trades that are going on, and he said, for everyone there's made, there's about 100 phone calls, Sal. So, I mean, there's a lot of talk going on, in the NFL between general managers right now. All right. Well, listen, we've talked for close to an hour here. We hope everybody enjoyed us breaking down the roster and where it might sit as of Tuesday, but we'll get back after it on Tuesday and let the dust settle in, Matt, and figure it out. Let's remember, though, just because the roster is kind of quote unquote set on Tuesday with the 53 doesn't mean it's set, because Wednesday is waivers. That's when, there's 3 guys that we would like on other teams that got released. We're just going to claim them. And now we're going to cut 3 guys we kept.
Didn't that happen a couple of years ago with Nick McLeod? Didn't he make the Bills?
Oh, yeah.
And then didn't because they claimed somebody?
I think it might have been. That could have happened. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the Bills have had several guys claimed also over the last few years, right? Jack Anderson, who played today for the Panthers, he was on their squad. Jack Anderson, he was claimed. Who was the Alec? It was not Alec.
No,
Alex. What's the guy's name? They drafted. He's on the Patriots now. Alex. They drafted him a couple of years ago. It's going to bother me.
Is it Alec Anderson?
No, it was Alex Anderson and not Alec, right?
I thought it was Alec Anderson.
No, Alec Anderson is on the team now.
Oh yeah, duh. I was like, why?
Here, I'm gonna tell you exactly who it is. Well, no, he wasn't. Here, give me 1 second.
Jack Anderson.
Jack Anderson was claimed, but he was plucked by the Eagles a couple of years ago. Okay, and then he went ultimately went to the Colts. The Bills have Ryan Vandermark, so that's not the guy. I'm talking about a guy they drafted. Here it's Alex Austin, was drafted by the Bills in the 7th round, and he was waived, and the Patriots claimed him, and he actually picked off Josh Allen last year.
Was Alex Austin from a team that wore orange in some capacity? Why is that ringing a bell?
In college? Yes, yeah. Oregon State.
That's why I remember the videos of him
Thank you.
playing in college. Yes, the flashbacks there.
Glad that
We got there. We got to talk for 30 more seconds just so we can go over an hour, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Okay.
I mean, we've had hour episodes before, but not. I mean,
Nice
this is a
round
random
number
one.
here.
We'll try and do another one next week. It's probably smart to wait until. Well, we could do something Tuesday, but I was going to say it might be smarter to wait until Wednesday because I think there might be something that happens between Tuesday and Wednesday.
Either way, whatever. We could do either way. We'll figure it out. But yeah, Tuesday is cuts. By the way, let's just get the timelines of everything here. Cuts are going to happen, and final cuts have to happen by 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Every team in the NFL has to be down to 53. That's when they can put guys on IR. They can keep 2 guys. They can designate 2 IR guys that day for return later. Anybody else who goes on IR they don't designate is out for the season, short of an injury settlement later. Then all the players who are not in the league 4 years who are released are subject to waivers, and any team can claim them by Wednesday at noon. Anybody who's released who has been in the league 4 years is a free agent automatically. They can sign with another team anywhere else. That's how all this is going to happen. We do not expect to have any practice with the Bills Monday or Tuesday. We are going to hear from Sean McDermott, I believe, on Monday. Is that probably the plan? A Zoom call with Sean McDermott?
My assumption, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll hear from Brandon Beane on Wednesday after the dust has basically settled here. And then we start talking about the Arizona Cardinals.
Indeed. Thanks, guys.
All right. You
Talk
got it.
soon,
Thank
Joe.
you.